see, there is a hint in the following up of my previous video about propagandas and whatnot. I talk a lot about that. And the United States, if you have interest in watching the press conferences of the State Department, US State Department, now that the US is concerned with Russia's meddling in the world, basically, in anywhere. I mean, basically they are concerned about places where a narrative which differs from their own is used. So much for freedom of speech and diversity of opinion and all that good stuff that we know that the US values, right? And so if you watch yesterday's press conference, I mean, it's literally, it looks like they are reading. Anthony Blinken was present there. Normally it's Matthew Miller, he does the job. This time Anthony Blinken was there too, and he was expressing his concern, and he did mention some names of some channels, which of them I follow. One of the channels he mentions that he says is controlled by RT. I don't know if it is or not, but I think it's a very good quality channel. I haven't seen any like lying or misinformation. They actually educate people on the history and on the facts, and especially on US foreign policy and Western foreign policy in the soil of Africa. The channel is called Africa Stream. So they've signaled that one out, and it was another one that he mentioned that I can't recall. And they are accusing that RT has metastasized. That's I'm using the expression. They didn't use it this way, but the RT is like going undercover, assuming the faces of many channels, to spread, according to them, it's propaganda and misinformation. I mean, can you already notice the absurd in this? But what is this misinformation's objective and this propaganda objective? Anthony Blinken has also stated that the objective of this misinformation is to create the meddling goes as far as organizing assassinations, organizing coups, overthrowing governments. Can you see the mirror there? When Anthony Blinken is deeply concerned that why, and this is the funny part, why is that Ukraine does not have more support abroad? Why actually the majority of the population of the world doesn't buy into the US versions of Ukraine? Their explanation is it's because they are brainwashed by RT's propaganda. Which, I mean, it's, if you follow these channels, they mainly debunk US propaganda. And they mainly debunk not just US propaganda, but the Western narratives that still treat Africa like a bunch of colonies. I remember when they were advancing the word that they said that beware of the Chinese in Africa because they are debt slaving the countries there, and so on and so on. And then if one would scrutinize it, would realize that the Chinese are actually offering fair deals to most of those countries. Building infrastructure, valuable infrastructure that the West never built because it was not in their interest to do so. And sometimes when you have loan schemes, and we build you an infrastructure, you give us something back. Even when there was I don't recall if it's Namibia, one of the countries which the head of state even mentioned that they noticed they had the deal with China, and they noticed the deal was unfair after the deal was done. So they protested, and they called the Chinese officials to, I wish I could remember the country, maybe Namibia. And then, the Chinese agreed to adjust the agreement to be more fair. Can you see the United States doing that? I mean, the United States just creates mayhem. I have asked this question in the past. Some people, some of you answer to my plea for comments on the videos. And one of the questions I'm going to do now, early on the video, is that tell me one country, just one. And I mean, if you can manage it, it still doesn't prove, but I only ask one. I mean, I'm being very generous. One country that has fared better, a country post World War II. Let's put it just in this. I mean, it's a short span of time. It's 17 plus years post World War II, where the United States have intervened and the country became better. Or the country stayed the same. I'm giving it very cheap, so you can find an argument. Oh, but maybe they stayed the same. No. I tell you, there's not a single one. All of them have been ruined by US intervention. They have several stages for intervention. Those stages of intervention are the ones they are accusing of Russia doing now. I mean, they send their soft skills people intimidating and proposing loans and privatizing, making them privatize their utilities and national sectors, strategic sectors. Basically, they destroy the economy, they enslave, they create impoverishment of the people. If this doesn't work, they go in. I think there was a guy that wrote about this like 10 or 15 years ago. I think his name was John Perkins, and he used to do this job, the economic hitman job. This is well documented. It's the US tactics. I mean, they've overthrown many governments, and if something doesn't work, they try. They finance and equip groups that then incite to violence. Like, for example, where we saw in Georgia, we saw in Libya, we saw in Syria, we saw in Ukraine. They are masters of overthrowing governments. They also they do target assassinations. Omar Torrijos being one of the ones that I can remember. You can go and that's easy Google to do. So now they're accusing Russia of doing that, and therefore they want to attack channels that they suspect they are somewhere aligned. I mean, I don't know if they are aligned or not. It's not the point. It's not the point. It's the hypocrisy. That's the point. It's like, and they have the nerve to go and say this, Anthony Blinken with a straight face saying, oh, Russia does this and does that. And if people don't know better, they fall for it. Because it's them who are the masters of doing that and of creating havoc, supporting dictatorships. So I wouldn't be surprised if Russia did play that game. I wouldn't be surprised. Who can blame them? They cannot be eternally on the defensive and just watching the Americans taking advantage of their hegemony and their media experience. No, the Russians were smart. They created RT, which indeed is a very good channel. I know that some people might disagree, but for a long time, while it was still legal, I still watch it, but it's not so accessible now as it was before. I had it on cable TV, and there you could see the other side, the other version of the events, and it was like a breath of fresh air. And it's not like that propaganda that outright lies and really doesn't tell you anything constructive or truthful. No, it's nothing like that. They have good documentaries, they have a lot of history, they debunk a lot of Western shit, but that's because West is full of shit that needs to be debunked, and that's the reason. So it's what the Americans call propaganda, is basically shit that they've done that they don't want anyone to talk about. I think it's the best definition for what the West defines as propaganda. And now there's another subject, that subject of the red lines. The red lines. Just because Mr. Vladimir Putin mentioned red lines in a speech in 2021, it's not like Russia is talking about red lines. Oh, we have this red line and that red line. No, it's the West. It keeps insisting on this term and using this term in order to build a narrative which gives the appearance of like a slackened Russia or a sloppy Russia, a Russia that just talks but doesn't make it up to the talk. Or give you an example. Oh, Russian red line have been crossed. Russians haven't responded. And so they want to make it appear that Russia is weak and it cannot fulfill its threats and something like this. But Russians are not saying, oh, you crossed another red line. Oh, this is a red line, and then the red line is crossed. It doesn't happen this way. This is all a narrative made by the West using an expression that Vladimir Putin used once, but it's like it doesn't even matter because Russia did follow through its words, because this was said in 2021, and look what happened. There were pleas for peace, proposals for peace projects, peace architecture in Europe, made by Russia. Russia was watching what it was being done on its doorstep. It did insist many times. It did mention red lines, and then finally happened. It was pushed to it. So it did follow through. And it has been following since after. I don't know what red lines are. They keep talking about it. That the Russians don't talk about any red lines. That keep being crossed, and the Russians don't do anything. It's an outright lie. It's because the Russians have been managing the conflict very cautiously. The stupid people who laugh, point the finger and laugh, look, this just bluff or something like this. They think very primitively. It's like monkey thinking, or no offense to the monkeys, of course. What the hell do they expect? Do they wish Third World War to start? Is that what they wish? Are they so brain dead, so stupid that... What the hell do they expect? Russia is acting patiently and accordingly. And this is all factual. I mean, I'm talking about it broadly. There are a lot of resources you can go to and see the history, what it has been done so far. Where it led ultimately to the invasion of Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine was amassing an army on its borders, was becoming a very strong candidate to NATO, was adopting a really anti-democratic, anti-Russian NAZI policy, was destroying everything, was and is still destroying its very culture, all with the sponsorship of the good old USA. So I don't know what of course now we had the latest episode of the missiles strikes deep inside Russia. Look, Storm Shadows have been used in Russia. They've been used in Crimea, if you recall. And Ukraine's strikes deep inside Russia being the latest strike, the one where they used 144 drones and killed a civilian and wounded several others in Moscow. So it's not the authorization to use our weapons in that territory. No, it's Russia said you cannot do this, otherwise things will radically change, because the use of such missiles, long-range missiles, mean that, because Ukraine doesn't have the capacity to do that, means that that's an operation done directly, the whole process, by the West, therefore making the West directly a part in this conflict, which it already is. Okay, I can give you that, which already is. But still, what do we expect? World War III? Because they use Western equipment? I mean, that would be the same. Not even the Americans dared to do that in Vietnam. You remember that? Vietnam, not a nuclear power. USA, a nuclear superpower. They waged war against Vietnam until they got kicked out. There were talks of they use all kinds of nasty weapons though. Mainly chemical weapons, Agent Orange. But they never dare to use nuclear weapons. So Russia is not doing that. I don't believe unless the threat becomes really serious. But still, they have many things they can do if the West decides to strike and Russia decides that they are at war with NATO. There are many conventional deeds they can do. For example, supplying very advanced weapons to the Houthis, for example, or any other proxy that is willing to sink a US aircraft carrier. I mean, I don't think the US wants to risk that in Ukraine. So there was a lot of rhetoric. Oh, finally they allow, and then hours later they did not allow, and we know that they want to allow the use of such weapons, but it's not allowing, it's using them themselves. We have to be aware of the wording that composes these sentences. So we know that something's going on, but for now the West has backed down, because most of the times it behaves like a big spoiled brat in possession of a very big power. That's how would I describe Western foreign policy. It's only based on lying, smearing, exploiting. Look at what Europe had to gain with this. Can you answer in the comments? What do you think? Europe is in the right side, completely antagonizing the Russians and having his economy being hurt? I know some of you might believe in the fairy tale of transition to the green energy in order to be independent from Russia, but maybe that's because you only one that thinks that might spend too much time on the screen, very little time outside watching the reality. So yeah, but the narrative always wants to portray a weak Russia, always. And it's at the same time wants to portray a very dangerous Russia. And that's the paradox in the Western propaganda. And that's the paradox that intrigues me, because any sane person would think, look, you have to decide in your mind. Either they are very dangerous or they are a third-rate army. You have to decide, because it cannot be both at the same time. This motherfucker Jake Bro, sorry my language, which I've made a video about, perfect example for that. In the same thought, you can lay down both ideas simultaneously, and both ideas are not simultaneously true. It's either one or the other. So yeah, the West keeps shining. It's really, and of course you have other signs of people claiming to how they are fighting for freedom. Of course, I'm not gonna even mention anymore, because it's been mentioned a lot of times. The state of affairs inside of Ukraine, the degrees of liberties, the persecutions, the NAZI is running amok. But there are a lot of symptoms of that these democracies in Europe are not healthy. That these leaders have very bad quality. They are not the leaders of the past. They violate rules very easily. They disregard their population's well-being. They're just following orders from higher places from abroad, outside of their countries. They are not acting according to the interest of their populations. The most recent example is that Germany just shut its borders. Imagine if a country like Portugal or Greece would dare to do that inside the European Union. Just shut its borders. But Germany can do it. It's for 6 months, they say. Yeah. They open a big precedent. And I know many weird things are going on. Europe's economy keeps declining. Of course, when I mention Europe's economy, is mainly the German economy. Their production capacity is going down. The trend is going down. And we know why. We know it's the golden age of cheap energy that could really make your country prosper are long gone. And why? Because you have chosen so. Because you let your allies blow your infrastructure so you can be a hostage of your own allies. Yeah, I think I'm gonna shut up for now. I hope I see you on the next one. If you have any comments, please speak your mind. You know I'm not censoring anything. So I hope I see you on the next one.